And now these words for reflection from Thich Nhat Hanh. They don't publish the good news. The good news is published by us. We have a special edition every moment, and we need you to read it. The good news is that you are alive. The linden tree is still there in the harsh winter. The good news is you have wonderful eyes to touch the blue sky. The good news is that your child is there before you and your arms are available. Hugging is possible. They only print what's wrong. Look at each of our special editions. We always offer the things that are not wrong. We want you to benefit from them and to help protect them. The dandelion is there by the sidewalk, smiling its wonderful smile, singing the song of eternity. Listen, you have ears that can hear it. Bow your head, listen to it. Leave behind the world of sorrow and preoccupation and get free. The latest good news is that you can do it.
In 1984, I was a first-year student at Cornell University, and I signed up to be a peer counselor for the EARS program. EARS stood for Empathy, Assistance, and Referral Service. We were trained in active listening skills using so-called unconditional positive regard as described by noted psychologist Carl Rogers. The Rogerian training we received had us practice listening and reflecting back what we'd heard. One person would say, I'm trying to deliver a sermon following this incredible song. Everyone's sort of blown away by the song, so I'm hoping they'll pay attention to the sermon. And then the next person would say, it sounds like you're trying to deliver a moving and engaging sermon following a moving and engaging song. So that sort of thing. We were trained to notice body language and tone. I found the training to be extremely effective, and I've used the techniques and this framework for almost 40 years, but I do not use them consistently. So several years ago, I was walking our dog Lufa around our neighborhood. My neighbor was having a tree cut down. I started talking to him about the tree, and he told me the arborist was just gonna take the wood and dispose of it. He said that I could have it for free if I wished. He had me at the word free. So I ran home to Lucinda, and the conversation that followed went something like this. Honey, do we want free wood? Our neighbor's cutting down a tree, and we can have all the logs for free. What? She answered. Which neighbor? How big are the logs? We have a very small chainsaw that plugs in. Will it work on them? Yes, I'm sure it will. Can I go tell him yes? Well, I'm not sure. I don't want to have the logs in our backyard for months. So that's a yes? I guess so, sure. Ran back to my neighbor. Pretty soon the arborist's truck was driving down our driveway. It's got this big claw on it. Those of you who've ever seen an arborist truck, and so soon that claw was depositing these magical and free logs that would provide us firewood for so long. And as you can probably guess, they stayed there for quite some time. I mean, not for months, for years. Turns out our tiny little plug-in chainsaw was completely inadequate to cut the logs. I cut like 3, but most of the logs were giant and the chainsaw was this long. I could have figured this out had I taken a minute to think about it instead of basking in the glow of something free. We ended up hiring a neighbor to cut and split the wood, and the free wood story became both funny and cautionary tale in our marriage. Now, I hadn't forgotten my Rogerian peer counseling training. When the free wood came about, I still had the skills of summarizing, reflecting, noticing body language, tone of voice, and my training in rape prevention had taught me that someone saying sure wasn't the same thing as someone saying yes. So why didn't I use those skills and that knowledge? I was having a conversation with a woman who means more to me than anyone else, my life partner, whom I love, respect, and cherish, and who's here tuning in with her friend Valerie from the state of Maine. You would think that Lucinda's thoughts and opinions meant more to me than anyone else's, yet in that moment, I cared more about getting the free wood than I did about listening to her. The consequences were not that huge. We had logs in our backyard for a couple of years. But the choice I made not to listen actively, could have had far worse consequences in other situations. I wish I could say that my choice has no basis in gender roles or male socialization, but I can't. Dr. Deborah Tannen's research, as well as that of many others, shows that men speak up far more than women, especially in meetings and other public arenas. Author Darcy Reeder adds that when women and men are together, men talk more, and yet they think women talk more. So to many men, it feels like an argument when a woman speaks up. It feels like an imbalance because their unspoken, unconscious expectations are that women will quietly agree. For myself as a man, and a married man at that, it is of utmost importance to me to treat Lucinda with respect. I do value her opinion more than anyone's. Yet in this particular instance, I chose not to actively listen. Indeed, I chose to ignore obvious verbal and nonverbal signs from her. In her book, Men Explain Things to Me, Rebecca Salney says, most women fight wars on two fronts. One for whatever the putative topic is, and one simply for the right to speak, to have ideas, to be acknowledged, to be in possession of facts and truths, to have value, to be a human being. In other words, if you're not listened to, if you are denied your voice, you may not be valued. You may not be seen as fully human. And when someone is not seen as fully human, it's easier to commit violence against them. So in the end, active listening is violence prevention. Whose voices get listened to in our culture? Whose voices get drowned out? Our denomination tries to center the voices of marginalized people, especially those voices and leaders within our denomination. As young people say on the internet, we signal boost women's voices. We signal boost Indigenous people's voices, as Sadie did a few weeks ago. We signal boost Black voices, young voices, LGBTQ voices, disabled voices, immigrant and refugee voices. In some ways, we're trying to make up for lost time. Until relatively recently, ordained ministers looked exclusively like me. Women were not ordained. People of color were not ordained. LGBTQ people were not ordained, and we didn't perform marriage ceremonies except for heterosexual couples. But years ago, I was proud to stand with so many Unitarian Universalist siblings at the Massachusetts State House day after day until marriage equality became the law of the state and then the law of the land. Some of you were there. Our denomination listened to our LGBTQ leaders, then took action that has had lasting impact. And this month marks National Coming Out Day. And I'm proud that this Nashua congregation has become a safer space for lesbians, gay men, bisexuals, transgender, gender non-conforming people of all ages, and all family types. And none of this would have happened if those with privilege did not listen to those who do not. Today, Tess brought us the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, who says, "You have ears that can hear it. Bow your head, listen to it." And Shel Silverstein, who tells us that anything can happen, anything can be. Emma started us out with the words of UU Minister Eric Walker Wickstrom, who prays, "May we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves in this world." My active listening training at Cornell taught me how to listen to someone's body language, but it didn't teach me how to listen to someone's who have historically not been listened to because of their race, class, gender, or sexual orientation. Fortunately, our UU denomination, though far from perfect, has helped me hone these active listening skills, because many of our denomination's ancestors listened when Sojourner Truth said, "Ain't I a woman?" They listened when Olympia Brown said, "Let women be given the right to vote. Let women be ordained into the ministry." They listened, and some of you listened, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said he had a dream. And we listened to the body language of Trayvon Martin when he said, "All I want to do is walk home with my Skittles." We listened to Ahmaud Arbery's body language when he said, "All I want to do is take a jog through my neighborhood." We listened to Breonna Taylor's body language when she said, "All I want to do is sleep peacefully in my own bed, in my own home." We listened when George Floyd called out for his mama. And we are still listening to the 545 immigrant and refugee children still separated from their parents by our government. During the Wonder Box, Emma told me that we can listen with our heart, not just with our ears. I wish I had listened with my heart that time Lucinda was telling me what she wanted, but I did listen with my heart a different time. We were driving into Boston. She was the passenger I was driving. We came down Route 2, past the Alewife station in Cambridge, to Fresh Pond and those rotaries. Traffic was moving pretty fast, but I saw a gap in the rotary. The gap was slightly larger than my car, so I thought, I can do this. Zoomed in, got into the space, merged smoothly, congratulated myself on yet another small victory in the realm of Boston driving. And then I noticed Lucinda. She curled up like this in her seat. She looked afraid. She said in a really tiny voice, "We're gonna die, we're gonna die." Now, she had done this before, because I had driven like this before. I assumed she was kidding around, and I usually responded by brushing it off, downplaying her nervousness, reassuring her I had the situation well in hand. In other words, by letting her know she should not feel that way for whatever reason. This time I could not brush it off. I could not downplay. Because in that moment in Cambridge, I listened with my heart. And I saw the woman I love more than anyone was scared. And it was my driving that had made her scared. And in that minute, the listening with my heart cleared away all the cobwebs of self-delusion. I apologized and began to cry like this. I found a safe spot to pull over, cried more, cried hard for this and for other times when I had ignored what she was clearly telling me with her words or with her body language. I told her I would try harder to listen better, and I have tried harder. So what do when you listen with your heart? When we as a community listen with our heart, we signal boost the voices of our UU leaders on the margins. When we listen with our heart, we celebrate National Coming Out Day. We bring our UU banner to the National Pride March. When we listen with our heart, we side with love against homophobia. We bring our UU banners to the Massachusetts State House. We side with love against marriage discrimination. When we listen with our heart, we vote. We vote for candidates who listen instead of interrupting. We vote for candidates who listen to science instead of mocking it. We vote for candidates who listen to climate science and commit to taking action to stop climate change. We vote for candidates who listen to the voices of immigrants and refugees. We vote for candidates who will make America kind again. When we listen with our heart, we do what Jen Morton did 11 days ago. Many of you know that Jen, upon hearing that a transphobic flag had been raised over the city of Nashua, Jen organized through the night, contacted the mayor, educating him and urging him to take it down. As the night wore on, more and more people committed to showing up the next morning to protest this flag and to stand up for transgender friends and family. But by the time the vigil began, the mayor had listened to Jen. He had read the articles that she sent to him, and he had taken down that flag. Yay, Jen, in the text chat, indeed. Jen tells me this is a group effort, but please join me in thanking Jen Morton for listening with your heart, for taking action against transphobia. Thich Nhat Hanh said the good news is you have wonderful eyes to touch the blue sky. The good news is that your child is there before you and your arms are available. The dandelion is there by the sidewalk, smiling its wondrous smile, singing the song of eternity. Listen, you have ears that can hear it. The good news is you can listen with your heart. The good news is we can listen with our hearts together, and in doing so, we can change ourselves and this world. Amen, and blessed be.